Good morning and welcome to today is a special report. I'm Vanilla Valencia Cahaya, and in this segment we turn our attention to a deeply important yet often overlooked issue: violence against indigenous religions. Across the world, millions of people continue to practice spiritual traditions that have been passed down through generations. This belief system, rooted in a culture, identity, and ancestral wisdom, represent humanity diverse ways of understanding the ultimate reality. However, behind this rich diversity lies troubling reality. Many indigenous communities still face discrimination, marginalizations, and even violence because of their beliefs. When we talk about human spiritual experience, we are really talking about something universal. Every culture, every society has taught meaning beyond the physical world. This has led to the emergence of countless religious practice, each offering its own interpretation of truth, purpose, and the ultimate reality. Yet, instead of being embraced, these differences have often become source of conflict. Indigenous religions, in particular, are highly vulnerable, unlike major global religions with institutional support. These these traditions are often practiced by smaller communities with limited political and social protection. As a result, they frequently become target of misunderstanding and prejudice.
I feel like in the Catholic religion that it wasn't.
Robert Lentz came and did a painting for the people, and that was really something for us to see and know that our faith was being acknowledged.
In some religions, followers of indigenous religions are denied basic rights, such as access to education, legal recognition, or freedom to worship openly. Sacred lands are sometimes taken away for development projects, disrupting not only their way of life but also their spiritual connection to nature. Even more concerning are cases of direct violence. There have been reports harassment, forced confession, destruction of sacred sites, and physical attacks. These acts are not just violations of human rights, they are also attack on cultural heritage and identity. So, why does this continue to happen? One major factor is the lack of awareness. Many people are simply unfamiliar with indigenous belief systems, leading to stereotypes and misconceptions. Another factor is the dominance of mainstream religions or ideologies, which sometimes view alternative practice as inferior or even threatening. But perhaps the most fundamental issues lie in the our inability to fully accept diversity. While it is easy to acknowledge difference on the surface, true acceptance requires deeper understanding and respect. Experts argue that protecting indigenous religion is not just about safeguarding minority rights. It is also about preserving humanity collective wisdom. These traditions often contain valuable insight into environmental sustainability, community living, and spiritual balance. For example, many indigenous belief systems emphasize harmony with nature. In a time when the world is facing environmental crisis, such perspectives and are more relevant than ever. Increasingly, there have been positive development. International organizations and human rights groups are increasingly advocating for the recognition and protection of indigenous communities. Some governments have also begun to implement policies that acknowledge indigenous religion as part of national identity. However, much work remains to be done.
Which hasn't been seen in decades. Fueled by their deep-seated resentment towards the wealthy elite, and a strangled.
As we reflect on this issue, one question remains. Can humanity truly embrace of its spiritual experience without fear or prejudice? The multiplicity of religions practice is not a weakness. It is reflection of the richness of human understanding. Recognizing the diversity is the first step toward building a more inclusive and compassionate world. I'm Vanilla Valencia Cahaya. Thank you for joining us these important discussions.
Too complicated and non-prescriptive.
How to stop wars and famines.
We're competing over resources. We're competing over who writes the rules for the global economy. But at the same time, we have a world of hyper interdependence. The future of one country is completely linked to the future of the next.
The problem is that
Thank you, Vanilla, for that insightful report. Now, shifting from social and cultural issue to the global economic landscape, the year 2012 brings a mix of uncertainty and caution optimism following years of financial instability. For more on this, here is Muhammad Ria Amir with our global economic outlook. Good day and welcome to our Global Economic Outlook segment. I am Muhammad Ria Amir. As the year 2012 begins, many are asking the same question. Is this a time for optimism and recovery, or should we prepare for another wave of global challenge? After several turbulent years in the global economy, uncertainty continue to shape the decision of the government, business, and individual around the world. To understand the present, we must first look at the recent past. The global financial crisis that began in 2008 in the United States marked one of the most significant economic downturns in modern history. What started as a collapse in the housing market quickly spread to the banking sector, triggering a chain reaction that affected economies worldwide. Soon after Europe faced its own crisis, several countries struggled with high level of debt, weak economic growth, and rising unemployment. This led to concern about the stability of the entire region.
Sensación de que en cualquier momento la cosa podría ponerse muy mal otra vez.
Now, attention has shifted toward emerging economies such as India and China, countries that were once seen as engines of global growth. Recent signs of slowing economic activity in this nation have raised new questions about the future of the global economy. So where does that leave us in the 2012? On one hand, there are reasons of caution. Economic recovery remains uneven and financial markets are still sensitive to shock. High unemployment rates in some regions continue to affect consumer confidence and spending. On the other hand, there are also reasons for hope. Many countries have learned valuable lessons from the past crisis. Financial regulation have been strengthened, and there is greater awareness of the risk associated with unsustainable growth. Governments and institutions are now more focused on building resilience and stability. This brings us the concept of the sustainability. Sustainability is no longer just an environmental issue. It is also an economic necessity. In simple terms, it means creating systems that can endure over time without causing harm to future generations. In the context of the global economy, sustainability involves responsible financial management, balanced growth, and long-term planning. It also requires cooperation between nations as economic challenges today are increasingly interconnected. For business, sustainability means adapting to changing conditions, investing in innovation, and considering not only profit but also social and environmental impact. For individuals, it may involve making more conscious choice, whether in spending, saving, or supporting sustainable practice. Looking ahead, experts suggest that the key to navigating uncertainty lies in adaptability. The world is changing rapidly, and those who can adjust to new reality will be better positioned to succeed.
Get to the heart of some of these challenges of global governance, what it's doing and what it is not doing at the moment. At this time, I might be saying switch off your iPhone, switch off your Samsung, switch off your Galaxy, switch off your iPad. I'm saying keep it on, but keep it on mute, because I'd like you to feel
is no longer able to address the challenges of the 21st century. Let me, as a kind of positive contribution, just outline some of the criteria how probably an optimal global governance system should look like, and we will see how far away we still are from such a system. First, a global system for the 21st century must be multi-stakeholder placed. Governments alone, business alone, civil society alone cannot address the issues on the global agenda effectively. Second, a global system should be systemic and not fragmented, departmentalized as it is now. Because
let me just give you the email and Twitter address so that you know where to send your messages. I hope it goes up there. But while it's appearing, let me give you an idea of the kind of messages I'm getting already, particularly on youth. What do you believe are the biggest issues facing global youth, and how is the global agenda engaging with these issues and young people? 17%, another one, 17% of the world's population are young people, 15 to 24, but 40% of the world's unemployed are youth. What?
While challenges remain, there is also an opportunity to build a more stable and sustainable future. By learning from past mistakes and working together, the global community can move toward a path of resilience and growth. I am Muhammad Ria Amir. Thank you for watching and stay informed as we continue to follow developments around the world.